The Florida Gators absolutely nailed the hire of John Sumrall. Or, well, maybe not nailed it. Maybe it's going to be awful. Who knows? Let's just take this trip, right?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free if it's the podcast and on YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Gators, it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. And the Florida Gators, by the way, I am Brandon Olsen, lifelong Florida Gators fan, host of Locked On Gators here every day. The Florida Gators yesterday announced the hire of John Sumrall. John Sumrall, of course, is the Tulane coach and was met with a lot of backlash, right? A lot of backlash, just frankly. And look, I will say this. I think it's fair to not like the hire. I think it's fair to not think that the hire will work out. All I ask is that for those of you who are already typing in the comments section, probably just use better reasoning. Like, if you're gonna tell me because he's a G5 coach, I don't care. That means nothing to me. That's not a thing. I would have preferred a Power 4 coach, right? But that because he's a G5 coach does not mean he's worse. It means he's riskier, which is fair, right? But doesn't mean he's gonna fail. It means that it's riskier. I will say, for the hire, and I know that I'm sorry for the people that want an opinion of like, is this a good hire? Is this a bad hire? I don't know yet. A lot of that's going to depend on what Coach Sumrall does. I don't know why I call him Coach Sumrall. I never do that. John Sumrall. What Sumrall does with his coordinators and assistant coaches. I think it's just tough to really go, this is a good hire or a bad hire based on who it is. What I can tell you is that John Sumrall is a very good football coach. Okay. In my opinion, you could disagree all you want. Again, that's where I go. Just please have a better reason than G5. But John Sumrall is a very good football coach, in my opinion, and from people that I've spoken to in the coaching world. So I'll say that about him. Is he a good head coach at the University of Florida? I don't know, right? It's risky. Like, I don't want, like, I know that people are getting like a little testy with me about it, but it's a risky hire. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just not going to say that it's a bad hire until I see the coordinators, which at this point, who knows? Like, one of the rumored names that we were hearing was Charlie Weiss Jr. Seems that he's going to LSU with Lane Kiffin. We'll talk about the coordinators in a little bit, but just this hire in general. Sumrall's resume, because I know there's a lot of people that bring that up, comparing him to Billy Napier. And I understand why you want to do that, right? Because people go G5 in the state of Louisiana, all that. We just did this. Yeah, sure. But I think that they're two starkly different situations right now. For starters, we can go back to where John Sumrall got his first head coaching job. He took over a 5-7 Troy team and then went 12-2 his first year. And I think that that's very impressive. I do. Then he went 11-2 the next year, and then he took over Tulane, who I will say Tulane was a great team the year before, right? They went 11-3. And then Willie Fritz got hired at Houston. John Sumrall came over from Troy to Tulane, went 9-5 last year, and is currently 10-2 and is playing for the conference championship. Which also important that one of the things that was constantly around the Lane Kiffin saga was if you take a job elsewhere, you can't coach if there's a conference championship game that Ole Miss makes, because again, this was weeks before the season ended. You can't coach in the conference championship. You can't coach in the college football playoff. You can't do any of that. And sure enough, Lane Kiffin has taken the LSU job and will not coach in anything. Okay. The flip side of that is Tulane with John Sumrall. That's a plus, right? Like Tulane, if they have John Sumrall, because John Sumrall is going to coach the American Conference Championship game, and if they win that and they make the college football playoff, he's going to coach in the college football playoff as well. Which a couple things on that. One, I like that. I think that's a win-win, right? Like Florida gets to say, hey, look at our coach in the conference championship, in the college football playoff. Like, look at our new coach doing that. And Tulane gets to go, hey, coaches, you want to come here to go to a place where you're going to get an SEC job? Come here. Which also, it is funny how much backlash there's been about Group of Five coaching hires when there have been 3 from the SEC yesterday. I do think, by the way, that you're going to see more Group of Five coaching hires coming up because of the way that the current athletic calendar is set up. It just makes more sense to hire a G5 guy instead of someone that's maybe playing in the college football playoff, right? At a Power 4 program. So there's difference there. For the people that are wondering why Florida would let John Sumrall coach these things, when the report or rumor that we've heard is that Florida backed out of the Lane Kiffin stuff because they had a deadline and he didn't hit it, and so they backed out and they didn't want to be stuck. The difference is that Florida was always willing to let people go, right? Like, Florida was always willing to let people coach. The difference is Ole Miss and Tulane. That's all that is. Florida was always very open with the Lane Kiffin ordeal, we'll call it. Which, look, I've said this for weeks now. Like, I'm ready for it to be over. I'm glad it's over. Okay. I thought he was going to be on our team. He's not. I'm still fine with just it being over. But the Lane Kiffin ordeal was always Ole Miss would not let him coach. And basically he needed to make a decision with whatever that was. Florida, again, the rumor is that Florida backed out of it because they weren't getting the commitment. Florida was always cool with, if you commit to us, we'll let you coach whatever you want. Like, if you say, hey, I'm signing with Florida and Ole Miss is going to let me coach this, then go ahead. If you're signing with LSU and they're going to let you do that, then go ahead. Florida was always cool with it. Like, Florida had no issue. LSU had no issue letting guys play. The school getting the guy doesn't seem to have an issue with letting the guy coach. It's when they leave. So that's up to Tulane. That's up to Ole Miss. Tulane's cool with it. And Tulane should be. That's a great decision for them. So I will say that about why Florida's comfortable waiting for Sumrall when they have the deadline for Kiffin. It's like, well, the deadline wasn't for Kiffin to be here. It was for Kiffin to commit to the program. And that didn't happen. So moved on. Right. And so for Florida, they went to John Sumrall, which, again, I know that we could say this with Billy to an extent, right? Like, when he entered the coaching pool last time, was SEC schools want him, right? For Florida, it was, everyone thought Alex Golesh was going to Arkansas. John Sumrall was going to go to Auburn, and Florida was going to get whoever Florida got, right? Florida felt they weren't getting Lane, so they went and got Sumrall, and then Auburn went and got Golesh, and then Arkansas ended up settling for Ryan Silverfield. That was one of the reasons that Florida had that deadline, was because if they didn't, then it's not Sumrall at Florida, it's Sumrall at Auburn, it's Golesh at Arkansas, or Sumrall at Ole Miss, by the way. That was the other school there. And Florida doesn't have Sumrall, who was their number 2. And, like, I know fans wanted Fish, Lincoln Riley, whoever it was. Sumrall was still their number 2. Like that's what it was. That was still, Florida would have just been in a spot where, like, all right, well, now we don't have our number 2. We need to go to our number 3. And I think that there's a lot of valid criticism around some of these things. I really do. But again, for me, it's like, I know John Sumrall is a good football coach in game. I know that people have been talking about his recruiting prowess. I'm going to say this. I don't know what he's done as a recruiter that's necessarily awesome. I do know that he had a 4-star offensive lineman committed to Tulane, and that's impressive. 4-star and 24/7. I don't care if you're going to come in and be a dweeb and go 3-star on Rivals. I don't care. So I know that he did that, but, like, I know him as one of those football guys. Just like, he's all about football all the time. And that's what a lot of fans wanted, right? I remember the comments of people going, well, with recruiting the way it is now, where it's just NIL, this and that, just get a really good in-game coach. That might be what you're getting. We are going to talk about some of these coordinator possibilities. Later on, we'll talk about hiring general manager Dave Caldwell. It's a lot. Look, I'll tell you what, it's not the Billy Napier era anymore, and I'm grateful for that. No matter which way this goes, I am grateful that it's not the Billy Napier era right now or anymore at the University of Florida. We'll talk more about the John Sumrall era when we get back with Locked On Gators. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. So the first time in my life. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive, right? Let's be honest. Getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. You can go, you could just be like, all right, my team's playing in my area. If they win, I'm buying tickets to the next one. You can do that. You can do that with Game Time because it's nice, easy. Get tickets last minute. Works out great. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free. We have us in the podcast and on YouTube. And like we've talked about, the Florida Gators have hired John Sumrall as their head coach, to much chagrin of the fan base there. And I do think that there's some valid reasons. But like I've talked about with the record, Sumrall is 42-11 as a head coach, which has all been in the group of five. And Billy Napier, prior to coming over to Florida when he was at Louisiana, he was 40-12, right? So John Sumrall has a 3% higher win percentage. Again, I don't think that that's first off, I don't think that's the flex that people think it is. Secondly, I don't think that that's as negative as people think it is. They have very similar records. John Sumrall's record is a little bit better, right? A little bit better than what Billy Napier had. Okay. Billy Napier at Louisiana was there for 4 years. John Sumrall has been 2 years at Troy, 2 years at Tulane. Billy Napier has 4 years there where he's leading the conference in recruiting every single year. And that was one of the big negatives, right? He wins a lot of close games, even though he's got the better team. Like he's got the better team over everybody in the conference, and he wins those games close. That's a concern, right? Because the guy with better talent, the guy with better players, a better roster, is barely beating teams worse than him, right? John Sumrall, similar like margin of victory, right? But John Sumrall has done it at 2 different schools in 2 different conferences, neither of which he's been the best recruiter in the conference, right? Neither of which he's had the best talent in the conference, but he's got actually a better record than Billy Napier. Also, incredibly important to note, Billy Napier's strength of schedule at Louisiana was incredibly easy, right? Which I think a lot of us, when that happened, when Billy got hired, we kind of just went, well, that's playing in the Sun Belt. Like that's what you get. But you're using similar talent players, right? Even though Billy had the best of the bunch. Sumrall has had, I think his first year coaching was a very easy schedule, and everything else was not difficult, but not, a cupcake schedule. It was probably average across FBS relative to the talent. And so I'm like, all right, well, Sumrall, and this year their schedule has not been easy at all, and they're 10-2. So I'll say that. But Sumrall went out and won, again, more games than Billy Napier while having less talent and a harder schedule. Saying they have similar records is not the insult of John Sumrall that you think it is. It's just not. Sumrall's a good coach. Again, that doesn't mean he's going to be a good head coach at the University of Florida. Like, I want to make that clear. when I'm saying that I think Sumrall's a good coach, or I know Sumrall's a good coach, yeah, I stand by that, but not that I think that that makes this a great hire or anything like that, because there's so many, we'll say, external factors that go into this where there's going to be a lot that helps decide the success here. It's going to be recruiting. It's going to be the assistant coach hires. It's going to be all that stuff. But I'm going to reserve my judgment for that. Do I think that Florida made the right decision hiring John Sumrall? I've said he wouldn't be my coach. Like when I made this, when we went live yesterday after the decision came out, I publicly was like, hey, he's not, like, he wouldn't have been the guy that I hired. He wouldn't have. He was always from day one, the day that Billy Napier was fired, John Sumrall was in tier 2 for us, right? And for us, I just mean Locked On Gators. Where tier 1 was the guys where I looked at it and I said that they'll keep the roster together for sure. And if they're the higher, I have expectations to be in the college football playoff next year. Because again, my stance has always been and will continue to be, this is a talented roster. Coaching failed them. Okay. Sumrall was in tier 2, tier 2W to be exact. And the differences in the tiers is that tier 2W was tier 2 proven winners. Everyone was a Power 4 proven winner. And then I included John Sumrall in that group because I thought he was the exception to it. I thought John Sumrall was the exception to being a proven Power 4 winner. He's a group of 5 winner consistently, really good at it. Yeah, I'll take that over whatever, like whatever crappy other name that people wanted to try to force feed to us. That's what it is, right? Like Sumrall, the reason I don't absolutely hate the Sumrall hire from the moment it happened is because Sumrall was always on my list. He was always on tier 2. Would not have been, I said this yesterday in the live show, I feel like he would have been probably like 8th to 10th on my list. Which is why I'm like, still on the list, but 8 to 10 is not a great spot to be in, right? But also he was higher on Florida's list than 8 to 10. He was, by the time we got to the nitty gritty of everything, he was number 2 on the list. And so, they got their guy, but John Sumrall is a winner everywhere he's gone. He does have SEC coaching experience. I think it's 5 years, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the same amount of time that Billy Napier had SEC coaching experience. So not less experience there, right? But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be great there. I will be interested to know what this assistant coaching staff looks like. And that's always going to be what determines how I feel about this hire. I think that Sumrall, again, fantastic defensive coach. I think he's a very good coach overall. He seems like an absolute psycho, and I love it. No more Kentucky punching us in the mouth. Like we get to watch this team fight. I'm really looking forward to that kind of fight. Like I can't wait for it. Not gonna lie, I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the Florida Gators play physical football again. That's what I'm excited for. And so I'll be really excited for that one next year. Just that style of play, right? Are they going to win games doing that? I don't know. They're going to be more physical, is my point. Are they going to win games? I don't know. That's going to depend on the coordinator hires. Which again, I'll be really interested to see what he could do that. I think the way that he's going to have to do this is use Florida's name to get in with bigger coordinators. And then ultimately make your decision and convince them that you're still the coach to pair with them. And that'll be the way to do it. One of the most publicly talked about names was, Charlie Weiss Jr. Kade Bell was another one that was brought up quite a bit. And Kade Bell, interesting because that Pitt offense isn't necessarily one that you think of when you think of a team that is wanting to play very stout, consistent defense. Like it's just like the rate that they throw the ball, I think is one that you don't usually see, but I'm glad that we're starting to see it a bit more. Shall I say that? I think Kade Bell's offense can work in the SEC. I think that there are some air raid coaches that get brought up, and I'm not sold that that'll work in the SEC. I do think that there are teams that really know how to defend just that kind of simple concept, which a lot of air raid work is pretty simple. Like it's supposed to be quick pitch catch, make a quick play, go ahead. Find an explosive if you can. So we'll see. I think Kade Bell is a good OC candidate. Charlie Weiss Jr. was mentioned a lot during this process. And I know that there were people who said, hey, if he doesn't go with Lane, then there's a decent shot for Florida. He went with Lane, so deuces. Those were the public names that I've seen a lot. I saw someone mention, I think it was Kevin Brockway, mentioned Brian Dable as a potential offensive coordinator candidate. And I know that people saw that, sent it to me because they know that I also cover the New York Giants and am also a New York Giants fan. And they were like, oh, how do you feel about that one? Terrible, right? And it's like, I think Brian Dable's a fantastic offensive mind. I do. I think he's a great offensive coordinator, great offensive mind. I just don't think he's a head coach. And I was saying that for a bit with the New York Giants coverage that I do, is that I just don't think he's got it in him to be a legitimate quality head coach. Every time things got tough, the team folded. And as the head coach, you've got to keep them from folding. Like, you've got to stop that. And he didn't do that. So I would say that if he's going to be an OC, he's going to be an OC. And I think that he can rally an offense. I just think, grown men, NFL defensive players, I don't think they bought it really. And I'll say that we know that he's been successful in college. We know that colleges are interested. It seems like he might be interested in college as well. We'll see. But Brian Dable would be a fun OC. I don't know if he's an actual candidate. Okay. I will also say that. I don't know if he's an actual candidate at all. It's just someone that got floated because of having experience with Dave Caldwell, who the Florida Gators hired to be their general manager. We'll talk about that when we get back with Locked On Gators. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, right? And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and deals are huge. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE, COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever the podcast and on YouTube. And the Florida Gators yesterday did not just hire a head coach, but they hired a general manager in David Caldwell. And David Caldwell is someone that we spoke about all the way back in January when Florida was first going through this general manager hiring process. They ended up getting Nick Polk and adding him to the staff. And the expectation is that will obviously no longer be a thing. At least the way that I think about it is that will no longer be a thing. So we can see that. But David Caldwell, many of you may know because he was the general manager for the Jacksonville Jaguars from 2013 to 2020. Okay. So general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2013, 2020. Then spent the past 5 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles, which is important to note because, the Eagles won a Super Bowl in that time. But also it's important to note because the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles is Howie Roseman. And Howie Roseman, really good general manager, arguably the best general manager in football right now. And I hate saying that. I do. Like I said, I've been very open. I'm a Giants fan. So I hate saying that. But Howie Roseman, arguably the best general manager in football right now, and a Florida alum. And Howie Roseman, I know that I've seen reports that he had a say, that they consulted him in this. I would imagine that he was involved heavily in this, and that he kind of gave like the green thumb or whatever the hell you want to call it, green thumbs gardening thing. But he kind of gave the thumbs up and said, all right, go ahead. And so now you've got Dave Caldwell here. I know that Jacksonville Jaguars fans absolutely hate him. I get that. But I also know that I've spoken to media members that cover the Jaguars. I've spoken to, we will say, personnel with the Jaguars, or used to be, and they love him. Like they've said, hey, he's very smart. He knows all about what it takes to build a team and what that process is like. But, and I mentioned this on the SEC Squad show yesterday, sometimes other factors and people get involved for a general manager and things get thrown off a bit. I don't think that's as much of the case with college football, so that'll be really interesting. I do like the idea of bringing in an NFL experienced general manager, because now this game is more similar to the NFL than it was to what college football was a decade ago, right? You're hiring someone that's going to basically be managing a budget, salary cap, whatever you want to call it, and trying to focus on resources and focus on finding acquisitions that are going to help this team in the offseason. Like it's a whole process, right? You got someone that has experience doing it at the NFL level, that has been for the past 5 years with the Philadelphia Eagles front office. He's like senior personnel director and advisor to the general manager, whatever that means. But he's been watching arguably the best to do it right now, do it. And so this is one where I will say this, I'm less optimistic about it. I will say that I'm less optimistic about Dave Caldwell than I am John Sumrall. But also, I'm just really interested in how they end up working together, because I think that college, there is a more significant role for the head coach general manager relationship than in the NFL. I think in the NFL, you have this, and there's 1,000 different people in the room all telling you things, and you got the owner right there telling you what they want, and that has to come into place for it too. But in college, I think it's more so head coach will speak to position coaches and find out their opinions on things, go to the general manager, have that. I'm sure that they have all these big group meetings, but I also think that there's a more significant just head coach GM relationship in college. And so, yeah, I'd be really interested to know how that works, or how they work together. But Dave Caldwell was someone that, again, in January, we spoke about this whole process for hiring a general manager, and Dave Caldwell was someone that we spoke about. He was one of the 4 names that Florida interviewed. And when they went through the hire, I remember we were talking about it on this show, and there were, of course, a ton of Florida Gators fans that are also Jacksonville Jaguars fans that weren't exactly enthralled with this, right? But like I said, like college is more like the NFL now than it's ever been. Now you have the cap. Now you have all that stuff. You need someone with that experience to ideally handle it. The other options were Nick Polk, who ended up getting the job, and then, yeah, we'll see what that is. Matt Lindsay used to be a general manager at Ole Miss, went to the NFL, has been around, right? Rick Mueller was Coastal Carolina director of player personnel, and then which was their GM before their GM role was really specific or prominent in college football. And then there was Dave Caldwell. And so, yeah, Dave Caldwell being, again, given the Gator thumbs up from Howie Roseman, I guess helps people. I'll be honest, this is going to be a hire where we'll see, what commits come, what commits decommit, what players come into the portal, what players leave. And at the end of Dave Caldwell's time, or at least for a while, we're not going to know what Dave Caldwell's really doing, or how he's doing, or what's the head coach. And I do think that they've got more of that little public shield as general managers. So you can feel how you feel about it. Like, I know there's a bunch of Jags fans that are going to hate it, and they're not going to change their minds, and that's fine. I think that it's good to have someone with that resume, but does that make him good? Not really. I don't think a resume tells you if someone's good or not necessarily. It tells you what they've done. Doesn't tell you how they got there, And so we can say that with Dave Caldwell, and I don't know. I don't think that's going to be one where we get to really judge a ton until it's done. But I could say that of that list, he probably would have been top 2 candidate if you just look at the resume. And then the interview and everything is its own thing. But Dave Caldwell, He's the general manager. That's all I can tell. Like I know like people want these big opinions, but like that's who it is. That's what he's done. That's where he's been. That's all we can really say, because this is also a field he's never dealt with. So it's tough to really say. You could say that it's a risky hire for that purpose if you want to. But I think you could argue hiring anyone for a GM at this point is a somewhat risky hire, just because I think it's a very risky position if you are putting a ton of responsibility in it. It's a new position, relatively. Means that, we're still figuring out who's good, what makes you good, what makes you bad, what makes you all that. Again, I'm just gonna hope their personal working relationship is good, and hang my hat on the fact that the Florida Gators have a head coach that's not Billy Napier, a head coach that I think is a very good in-game football coach, and it's just a good football coach. But time will tell. I need coordinators. I need coordinators to know how I'm going to feel about this hire. And I'm not saying big names. I don't need them to be a big name coordinator. I just need them to be a good coordinator. And so I need that before I can truly judge it. But overall, I think he's a good football coach. Wouldn't have been my hire at the top, but I care about the program. The people making these decisions don't really care about the program. They care about themselves and their egos. And that is what it is. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free. We have us in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow at the absolute latest to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI and swampsignal.substack.com. I am hoping for the day where, whatever sickness I had is completely gone, but this voice is just the voice for now. It is what it is. But thank you all so much, and I'll see you all next time.